before COVID.
Well, you got a blue
but
screen.
Nothing like this.
Now you got black screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at you being on
Little small.
I'm so sorry. I don't even know how to turn my sound off on my new iPad.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Bridget was saying they're used to seeing people.
Just get a smaller screen.
All right, I got 1 minute to sit with Kathy Business.
It was that way for sure.
That's pretty much the screen.
People are almost sitting together.
I wonder if you can adjust it on the projector. You can. Yeah.
All these things, so I don't get any notifications. Don't move. No filter.
They haven't been here to any meetings where there were people before, so this is really
Yes.
new for Michelle and Justin, or for Bridget and Justin.
It's brand new for me. It's brand new for me.
I was like, wait a minute, are you new? What?
Okay, friends.
Just because you forgot what it's like.
Already? We barely got here.
Ready.
Okay, 7 o'clock, we'll call this meeting to order and we'll begin by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Item 2, approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. 3, moving right into recognitions. 3.01, Dr. Brock, I believe you are taking over for this.
Yeah, I'll take over for just a minute. The item 3.01, Representative Burton sends his regrets. He was had something else that needed his attention, so he's going to reschedule with us. Claire advised me of that, and so she's going to help him coordinate with Sandy Kettle Camp to get that resolution done, either at another board meeting or possibly going to the school and providing a tour there. So he apologizes, but we'll go ahead and, since that's his resolution, I won't try to step in his place. So we'll get that rescheduled. So we'll really go ahead and transition into a little celebration for our retirees. And so I know this is not typically how we do things. We'd like to maybe get back to that, and looks like we'll hopefully be able to get back to that. But we did want to not only take a time to honor them by having their names on the agenda, but we've asked their supervisors to be here tonight to just say a few words about, maybe some highlights or some of their service to the district. So that's really what we're going to spend just a little bit of time doing. Thanks to Erica for putting the collage together. You see our retirees up there. Some of them are here tonight. All of them may not have been able to make it. I also want to let you know that they just recently got gifts on behalf of the board. So Claire put together a nice package of gifts that they received, and then she also got them a meal for them and their significant other if they choose. And I believe she's even gotten feedback from at least one person. It was good, that they heated it up. They thought it was good. And then we also got them something to put on their mantle or on their bookshelf, which symbolizes their service to the district. So wanted you to know that they recently received all of those items, and then we'll kind of round off with hearing about some of them today. So I'll call some of their supervisors up, and if they would step up to the podium, we'll kind of have them speak from there. So I'll start with Dr. Daughtry, and he'll lead us off tonight.
So here to celebrate, and Judy, if you don't mind standing up so everybody knows that, here to celebrate Judy Dunn. She has been with the district for 19 years in transportation, and coming out of the transportation world, I can tell you that is an accomplishment in itself, but she was in transportation even before she came to the Affton School District. So she served in multiple roles through contractors, and so she's been in transportation for a long time. And I will tell you, it's been a joy to work with Judy, diligent worker, always making sure that we get our kids to school safely, get them home safely. can tell you in serving in that role, there is no bigger stress in life than when those buses start to roll out for the first time during a school year and every morning, and then there's no greater sense of joy than when they come home. And I think you probably agree, and all the kids get home safely, and she's done an outstanding job of making sure that that happens for Affton School District in her 19 years. Since I've been here, we haven't had a bus that's failed an inspection. She has run a very safe operation, and you will be missed. So we appreciate your service, Judy, and thank you for all that you've done for Affton School District.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, I'll ask Jeff Rooks. Yep, Jeff has made it over here. I know we visited some buildings previously, and so Jeff is going to do the next two presentations, I believe.
Yeah, we'll start off with Salim Delik. He is here. Salim has worked with the district for 21 years. I've had the privilege of working with him for the past 2, and it has been an honor. He's most recently a recipient of the SOAR Award, so just this past go-around. Salim has been a huge positive, had a huge positive attitude and a positive image in our department, and especially at the high school. I know that he is the main maintenance generalist for that building. He's always been willing to help out in anything that we've needed. He's definitely made his mark on the district, and we'll definitely, not forget him. And he's made sure that we won't forget him, because on just about 80% of all his projects and repairs that he's made, he signs it and dates it. So you can kind of go into the deepest, darkest tunnel of this district, and you'll find Salim's signature. And I look forward to us finding more and more of those as years go down. He's one of those guys you hate to see him retire, but he has deserved it, and earned it. So congratulations, Salim. And then our next one is Dave Thier. Dave Thier is one of our groundsmen, and he's been with the district for 14 years. He is very kind, very dedicated, probably the most dedicated groundsman I've ever met in my life. He truly cares about the appearance of all of our campuses. Sometimes our lawn mowing takes a little bit longer because he was the one, he took the time to stop every time and pick up trash around instead of just kind of mulching it into the campus. And Dave's commitment to this district, even I got to see it, the extent of it when we went into lockdown last March due to COVID, and everybody was at home, and I got a call from Dave every day to remind me that the grass is still growing. And a progress report on where it's at and what he thinks we should be doing with it, to the point where I was like, if there's the most socially distant job in this district, it is out on a lawnmower by yourself outside. So I was like, Dave, if you really need to, you can come on in. And he did. And so, but that was like part of his commitment to the district. And he's another one that we will miss, but he has earned the retirement. So congratulations to Dave.
Thanks, Jeff. We'll ask Dr. Bean to come up, and I believe she's got the next two here. So we'll have her.
Good evening. All right, I'll start with Kathy Bellavia. So congratulations, Kathy, on completing 22 years of service at Manier Primary as an instructional staff assistant. Her role has looked a little different over these many years, but one thing has remained the same: Kathy's dedication to supporting Manier students, staff, and families. We'd like to thank Kathy for her flexibility, from squeezing into the tiny TA office to make all those attendance calls way back when, to being promoted to the luxurious loft for TAs. It didn't matter her location, Kathy could always be counted on to complete the task with a smile on her face. Kathy is the person Manier staff members go to when they need something, from fixing the laminator to helping a new teacher assistant. Kathy knows everything there is to know about Manier and has taken great pride in her role. Kathy has made a point to build positive relationships with everyone she works with. An example of this is how Kathy used car riders duty to build relationships with families and make sure that they knew their children were safe coming into the building. Last but certainly not least, Kathy has made a difference for countless number of students, From recess and lunch duty to providing reading, math, and behavior interventions, Kathy has supported so many students in developing the necessary skills to excel. She has a tremendous gift for connecting with students and supporting them as they learn and grow. Our very best wishes on a happy retirement. We will miss your professional expertise and your friendship and wish you only happiness in your future. Congratulations to Sandy on 35 years in education. Sandy's filled many different roles during her career, from being a substitute teacher in kindergarten through 12th grade, to being a first grade teacher, a second grade teacher, a third grade teacher, and then the last 15 years as a gifted teacher at Msba. As the gifted teacher, Sandy has worked to ensure her students have opportunities to be creative problem solvers, from challenging them to cut the piece of paper to only have one scrap, to all of the projects and units she would plan to allow her students to investigate, discover, and create. Her students always look forward to their adventures on sale days. Sandy's positive impact stretched outside of the classroom. She volunteered to help with, I think, almost every family event and special activity. Her dedication to Meanier's Hero Day is one example of this. Each year, she would work to invite community members to this special event that made such a positive impact on students and the special guest. When we were interested in piloting the Project Lead the Way program, Sandy took this opportunity to learn more and then train and support all of the Msba teachers. Because of her, these powerful learning experiences and many more will continue at Msba for years to come. Sandy, as you move on to your next amazing chapter of your life, know that you will be missed, and know that our very best wishes and thoughts go with you. Congratulations.
All right, we'll have Dr. Buck come up and do our next retiree.
Good evening. I have the opportunity to recognize Mr. Chuck Enger. So Mr. Enger has spent the last 20 years serving the Affton School District as a teacher, a coach, and an activity sponsor. I first got to know him in my time at Affton High School, where he coaches both soccer and baseball, but then got to know him a lot better over the last 7 years, where he served at Rogers as a middle school social studies teacher and as an activity sponsor for our after-school clubs. I think Mr. Enger has a reputation as a challenging teacher that really pushes his students to grow and to develop independence, and I think to a degree he prides himself on that reputation. But there's another side to him that I think sometimes maybe he doesn't want people to be quite as aware of, and that's just the way he connects with kids. I've long noticed that 7th and 8th graders that were previously in his class are frequently found coming down to the 6th grade hallway just to check in with him on almost a daily basis. And so, this year it's been a situation where I have to remind those students, all right, back to the 7th grade zone, the 8th grade zone, as we deal with kind of COVID-related stuff. But they're still looking to kind of reconnect with him. Another thing this year with the water fountains being locked down, we ask all of our students to bring water bottles. And with many things in middle school, it doesn't always happen perfectly. So it's almost every Monday morning I see Mr. Enger carrying in cases of water and snacks that he hands out to the students just because they forgot to bring their own. And so it's kind of that kid-first mentality that maybe we don't always think about or see that I really have seen come out as a part of this year. And then finally, on a bit of a personal story, it was my first year at Rogers 7 years ago. My son was a freshman at Affton High School playing soccer for Mr. Enger. And it was very early in the season. It was early September. He suffered a pretty severe injury. And I got the call when I was at Rogers that he had injured himself. And that an ambulance was on the way, which, of course, as a parent, always gives you that moment of panic. And when I got there, it was a pretty significant injury that required surgery and many things that went with it. But I was so impressed by the way he handled the situation. He kept not only my son calm, but also the rest of the team, who was pretty upset by it. And to me, that was just a great example and a great kind of first impression for me of him and the way he would always put kids first. And I think that's what I'll remember about Mr. Enger, is just that even with that reputation as a challenging, tough teacher, he really did always put kids first, and I'll miss that. So thank you, Mr. Enger.
And I'll have Dr. Myers come up for our last two retirees.
Hello. So first off, thank you, Salim. I know you have had to put up with the last 2 years of all my projects and all of the begging I do to get those things done for us at the high school. We do appreciate you. As far as high school teachers, tonight Affton High School wants to recognize Dr. Donald Martin for his 22 years of service to our school community. Dr. Martin was among the first group of teachers I interviewed prior to starting at Affton High School. His wit and humor were striking right from the start. Doc was always willing to take on various roles to serve the district. Each morning I remember Doc with a cup of coffee and his newspaper in hand and a jovial smile or a greeting for everyone. His impact was most obvious to all at the end of each school year when the shop students proudly delivered their latest project to a favorite teacher to share. The love found in those projects will be remembered for many years to come. Thank you, Dr. Martin, for all you do and all you have done for Affton High School. And our last retiree at the high school. Anyone with a history in Affton would be hard-pressed to find a photo of a sporting event without Mrs. Loris in it. Dee has been a staple of our school community and the greater Affton community for the past 24 years. She has her personality written all over the Affton High School yearbook, the pep rallies, and just about any other gathering you can think of. She's a constant demonstration of school spirit and Cougar pride. The halls will not be the same without the daily stampedes of students coming to get their good morning wishes from Miss Loris. And they usually got to walk away with a Pop-Tart as well. There are many programs that are still alive and well at Affton High School because of Dee's never die spirit and her willingness to sponsor anything that will keep kids involved in school. Mrs. Loris, thank you, Ms. Loris, thank you for your dedicated service.
That brings all of our recognitions as far as anything that our supervisors wanted to say. Personally, I want to thank those that showed up tonight. I know probably a number of things you could have been doing tonight, and certainly we maybe wish we would have had a different venue for us to convene, and just didn't quite work out. So I hope you realize that the things you did receive are just a small token of appreciation from the board and the district, but certainly wish we could do more, wish we could give you more, and so it does mean a lot. I think that for all of our retirees, but specifically those of you that were able to come out tonight, I know we all appreciate that. And I certainly also know they have other things to do tonight probably, so I want you to know you definitely are free to leave after this. We've got recognitions.
Except Tom.
Food trucks
Tom
are probably
can't leave.
still open, so I didn't know. At the same time, I did want to yield to see if there's any parting words that a board member might want to say, just because they won't be with us later on in the agenda.
We're just so very appreciative of everything that you all have done for this district. It's amazing how many years you have all served this district, and you're going to be missed very much. And we're so glad that we can have you here, at least, to see you in person. So thank you, and best of luck.
Yeah, thank you for all the impact on my kids, now my grandkids, and because I know there's been many touches there, and I appreciate it, and wish you well.
Yes, good luck. I guess all of you have seen both my kids go all the way through, so sorry to see you go, but I'm happy you're retiring, and I hope you enjoy it.
With that, I'll maybe pause for one more round of applause for everyone.
Yeah. I would leave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna keep doing some more recognitions.
Yeah.
We're gonna move on to our Afton's Strong Students from April.
We'll have Erica come up and tell us about our student recognition.
Absolutely. We'll shift our focus from those who served the longest in the district to those who aren't quite retirement age yet.
Right.
So we're going to start from the top and go clockwise. First up, we have Luke E. in 4th grade, nominated by his teacher, Miss Pitcher. Luke is an excellent role model in the classroom. He always tries his best and is eager to learn. When learning a new topic, he asks questions and wants to research more to expand his knowledge. Luke is kind to others in the classroom. He is helpful and accepts everyone for who they are. Next, we have Taylor E. in 8th grade, nominated by one of her school counselors. Taylor is a true leader to all those around her. She exemplifies excellence and innovation in and out of the classroom. Throughout her time at Rogers, Taylor has been an active member in clubs and has demonstrated academic excellence in the classroom. Taylor strives to learn more about her school community and served on the RMS Counseling Advisory Council this school year. She contributed innovative ideas for student leadership opportunities, such as student-led announcements and student-nominated Staff of the Month awards. She identified areas of improvement and shared feedback in a positive and constructive way. Taylor is truly wise beyond her years and will continue to bring greatness to the Affton School District. Next up, we have Braden H. in 2nd grade, nominated by his teacher, Mrs. Pluff. Braden is one of the hardest working students in our virtual 2nd grade class. Learning new things is not always easy, especially in a virtual classroom, but Braden has a lot of grit and never gives up. Through his hard work and determination, Braden has moved up 5 levels in reading this school year. In addition to being a hard worker, Braden is also just a delight to work with. He is very respectful to teachers and classmates, always listening to others when they're speaking and remembering to raise his hand. He comes prepared to class and small group meetings with materials ready and a big smile on his face. Braden also has great class spirit that is contagious. He is just a really good student and friend, a true representation of what it means to be Affton Strong. Everyone in Mrs. Pluff's virtual 2nd grade is glad that he is part of our class. Next up, we have Savannah H. in 1st grade, nominated by her teacher, Mrs. Morris. Savvy works hard to be present for all whole and small group Google Meets. She is friendly to all the kids in our class and is always a positive voice in our meetings. She genuinely cares about her teachers and peers and works hard to build meaningful relationships with them. Savvy is always excited to learn and does slow, careful work. Because of all her hard work this year, she has made great progress towards her 1st grade goals. She has been a ray of sunshine to our 1st grade virtual classroom, and we are glad she's a part of our class. Next up, we have Cole M., a kindergartner, nominated by his teacher, Mrs. Thier. Cole comes to school every day with a positive attitude and ready to work. He is focused and gets right to work on his task. He is respectful to others and is always willing to include anyone around him in whatever he is working on or playing with. He is kind of a quiet kiddo in the classroom, but mostly because he is always hard at work on something. Cole definitely shows perseverance when he is working. He may not always get the answer right the first time, but he keeps on working, and it always was with a positive attitude. This little one is definitely a bright light in our classroom. Next up, we have Wyatt N., a freshman, nominated by one of his math teachers, Mr. Dunn. Wyatt is a very reliable student. He comes to school and works hard every day. He is genuinely interested in learning, is inquisitive, and asks questions when he doesn't understand something. When learning becomes difficult, Wyatt meets the challenge and puts in the extra time and effort to be successful. Due to Wyatt's learning habits, he always comes away with a deeper understanding of the concepts than many of his peers. Next, we have Asmana in 1st grade, nominated by one of her school counselors. When a new student joined her class at the end of the year, Asmana told the student not to worry. She would help her learn all the important classroom routines. Asmana is consistently kind and looks out for those around her. She makes her classmates feel safe and welcomed. Next up, we have Gabriel P. in kindergarten, nominated by his teacher, Mrs. Kirksey. Gabe is an amazingly hard worker. He is dedicated to his learning and always puts in his best effort. Even when something is hard, Gabe gives 110% effort to continue trying to get it right. He doesn't let a struggle keep him from reaching his goals. Way to go, Gabe. Next up, we have Arna P. in 2nd grade, nominated by Mrs. Welty. Arna is a virtual student who displays the core values of Affton every day. She always attends my virtual group, prepared and ready to learn, and tries her best with each lesson we're learning. She shows respect towards other students in the class. I am so proud of how hard she works. Arna is such an outstanding student. Next, we have Lily T. in 2nd grade, nominated by her teacher, Mrs. McCabe. When thinking of a student that encompasses all of Mainer's core values, you can count on Lily. Every day she comes to school, Lily greets her teacher and classmates with a friendly smile. She has a positive attitude in all situations, and when things get tricky, she uses self-talk. Lily is a true delight to have in class and always works hard and tries her best. But most importantly, Lily is an incredibly kind friend to all the students in the classroom. And last but not least, we have Haley W. in first grade, nominated by one of her school counselors. When another student broke his arm, Haley took it upon herself to carry the student's backpack to the classroom to make it easier for him. Haley looks for opportunities to help others around her. And with that, these are our Affton Strong students, quietly making a difference in our schools and in the world around them. So thank you very much. Congratulations.
Feels so blessedly normal to be doing so much recognition and to even have people in our meeting tonight. So thank you for all the great things people are doing that we get to recognize. Okay, now we are on to section 4, the consent agenda items. Administration recommends, and I so move that the board approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
So it includes minutes from May 4th and disbursements. Any discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Section 5 is reports, and we will begin with our superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. I did list just a couple items that I think you guys are aware of that I just wanted to highlight. The first item was our student vaccination clinic, so thanks to a number of folks that made that possible. Our nurses, Erica, our HR department, our communication department, really did a lot of work to get that going. It was definitely planned in anticipation and a little bit of hope that the date that it was approved for students would come through. And so Erica reminded me that we've been able to conduct a clinic on the very first day that we were allowed to conduct a clinic, both for our staff and for our students. And so I knew we were close, but I guess I hadn't really thought about it was actually the first day that you could have even appropriately held an event like that. So like I said, kudos to those folks for staying on top of that and for making that available, and then certainly we'll continue to look for opportunities to help our staff and our students and our families out with vaccinations. Community Day of Service on Friday, you probably saw a lot of things being posted and just a lot of things that were going on across the district on that day. So thanks to all of our staff for making that happen, and then also for our students for being participants. Many of those things had been ongoing previous to Friday, so a lot of them kind of came to fruition, or we were celebrating some things that they had done, but in many instances that service had started well before Friday and was ongoing. But nevertheless, it is nice to have that designated day where a lot of things do go on right there in the moment with getting our kids involved with that. So like I said, a great thing that we do annually, and thanks to everyone who pitches in to make that a success. I know it's kind of the month of celebrations. I know last time we were together, we had Staff Appreciation Week, was certainly deserved, or Teacher Appreciation Week. And then since then, we've had School Nurses Day, so we paused to celebrate them. And then a more obscure and little-known day, School Communicators Day, which we also want to make sure that we pause to celebrate that, but certainly we benefit from having someone in our district who is able to lead us in that area. So lots of appreciation to all of those individuals and the work that they're doing, especially this year. Other item that we pushed out was just our ability to really keep our health and safety and transmission mitigation guidelines the same. It's always nice when they bury the lead on what schools should do when they make announcements, and so that usually comes after. So yeah, definitely appreciate some of that guidance that went out. I know a lot of people are probably looking forward to some of that broad, that broad guidance. At the same time, we did kind of circle back to what exactly does that mean for schools, and then for the short term, it really looks like for the rest of the school year, we'll be keeping our health, safety, transmission mitigation guidelines the same. by that same token, we certainly are not naive that we may have different approaches at the start of next school year. So similar to how we did this summer, honestly, what we would have done in June is different than what we ended up doing in August. And so I don't know that there will be that dramatic of a swing where things change that rapidly, but we will definitely get people involved, get people's thoughts and opinions, and certainly take our time with evaluating what are some of the things that we need to do for next school year, and not just default to, well, this is what we did this year, so we can't ever change that. And so I also want people to know we are definitely open to being responsive. We're open to doing things differently. At the same time, that's not necessarily going to happen right now through the end of the school year. Lastly, something that a lot of you on this board members will be involved with, looking forward to our graduation ceremonies for class of 2021 this week. Kick that off with a ceremony on Friday at 7, and then 2 ceremonies on Saturday at 3 and 7. I appreciate many of our board members being able to make it to that, and I look forward to being there myself. And once again, thanks to everyone, the administrators and staff at the high school that have put a lot of work into putting those ceremonies together and try to make them as meaningful as possible. And likewise, thanks to the graduates and families for kind of sticking with us and helping us get to where we feel like we've got a special ceremony. We want to make it as special as possible for those that are graduating. Lastly, wanted to just update you on my personal professional development. Many of you may have received an email today. If you're able to view my final presentation, this year we've met remotely as a cohort of individuals, many of them outside of education, but yet very interested in improving the communities around St. Louis County and St. Louis City. And so I was part of the STL Focus Impact Fellows this year. And so we met close to 20 times throughout this past year, and most of those were through Zoom. We had our first in-person meeting about a week and a half ago, and then I met in person with my project team again last week to try and finish off our project. Our project, or what we chose to work on, was youth violence prevention, and so our project was geared towards what is it that we can deliver that organizations could use if they want to hold a youth pop-up event as a way to provide a safe, engaging environment for youth as an alternative to something else that might lead to different outcomes. And so if we know organizations want to do that, we know they would like to provide different places and different events, and so we've tried to curate a toolkit so that they know where do we start? How do we start planning that? How do we budget for it? What are the things that are required to making it successful? So that's what you're going to hear a little bit about if you tune in for our presentation, and that's what we worked on as a project group, in addition to a lot of other beneficial things that we learned just being in one another's company. I enjoyed the diversity of the cohort, and I just appreciate the connections I've made and have certainly helped me professionally, even outside of the project that we completed. And then lastly, in looking ahead to next school year, I'm going to be engaging in a national social emotional learning fellows program. And so I really got advised of this opportunity through the National Superintendent conference that was held this year. It was a virtual conference, and so it made it easy to participate. And one of the sessions I chose to participate in, they mentioned that there was going to be this opportunity to have someone from the district get engaged with just moving social emotional learning forward, and that this is kind of a pilot project to see how this academy goes, and if it goes well, then they certainly hope to possibly expand this, and I think this also will have a project attached to it. So I think this certainly aligns with our strategic plan, aligns with a big focus area of the district, so I'm excited to get to learn from others across the country and just bring new ideas into the district for this particular area, as I see this living on as a key piece of Affton and the work that we're doing. So with that, that's my update for this meeting, and any questions or comments, happy to take those.
Lots of exciting stuff.
Yeah.
It's great to hear about the things that you're working on. We don't always have opportunity in our meetings to hear about them, so we know about them, but it's great when the community can have that shared with them too, so thank you.
I did have one quick question. What percentage of our students do you think were able to jump into that first? I can't remember what grades are covered by that age range. How many students were covered, and we did 200?
Mostly middle school and high school.
I would say probably mostly middle school, high school. We did have 16 and up that got a jump start on that, so we did find out that there were some high school students that had started to get vaccinated. And so I would, like I said, I'd have to look at the numbers. I would imagine it's probably that 12 to 15 was maybe the group that hadn't really had a chance, and so they might have taken advantage. And then certainly we probably did have some 16, 17, and maybe even 18-year-olds. But it did come to our attention that when it was available for 16 and up, that we had students and families that were going ahead and seeking that out.
Was it half the district, or I can't remember how many kids were even?
It was about 200 that got served
Right.
in that group, and
Okay.
we did open that up to staff who may not necessarily have had students that attend Affton. So we were kind of trying to help our staff out as well as helping our families out. So yeah, that's certainly something that we can look at and kind of see where we're at. But I think that's one of our goals headed into next year, is to have a good grasp on that, both at the student level and staff level, and where is that percentage of students and staff that are being vaccinated.
Do you have a sense if there's going to be other district-sponsored vaccination events for students throughout the summer prior to starting next year?
We're just starting those conversations, and I think kind of in talking with Erica, I know her and Ellen and others have talked about how to maybe map backwards and really draw attention to the fact that if you want to be fully vaccinated by the time school starts, there is sort of a deadline that you need to do it by this time. Otherwise, it's great. You might be able to start the vaccination process, but you wouldn't be fully vaccinated by the first day of school. So I think we're definitely trying to gear up towards possibly having an event that we host and really trying to help people understand that this is the date. And then likewise, how do you also maybe capture if it is approved for ages below 12? Then that would be another engagement opportunity that maybe it just becomes available. And so how do we time that so that we're serving people that are already eligible right now, but then we also may have a group that becomes eligible in June or even July. So I don't know how many more we'll try to coordinate, but I definitely think it's on the radar to try to do something over the summer with kind of making sure that anything we host, we do that in a time frame where students would be fully vaccinated by the first day of school.
I think one of the great things about it, because there's lots of opportunity for kids to go anywhere and get vaccinated at this point, but there was something about going up to the high school that really prompted my high schooler to say, well, yeah, of course I'm going. And, and a lot of his friends were vaccinated that day. So there's lots of opportunity for kids, but there's value, I think, in doing it in a place where they're familiar, where they're running into their friends, where it's the school nurses who are there. So I really appreciated
Yep.
that. Anything else? All right, moving along, 5.02, MSBA monthly board report. There is quite a lot going on in Jeff City right now. Do we have it queued up? If we don't, we certainly all have access to it outside of the meeting, but.
We have, because I've had numerous issues over the past few months with the
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's Board Report for the month of May. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at this spring's Missouri Assessment Program testing. Because of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on schools this year, the State Board of Education decided to continue with the annual MAP testing, but suspend the use of assessment results for accreditation and accountability purposes. Commissioner of Education Dr. Margie Van Dieven told those attending MSBA's recent legislative forum, it's important to use the assessment results to determine where students are academically as we emerge from COVID-19.
But what we're hearing is that kids are actually doing okay so far on some of the reading, that they're at least maintaining. We want to do better, we're focusing on literacy, but they're maintaining. Where they're falling behind is elementary math, because of those discrete math skills that are very challenging to do at home a lot of. So in particular, families are more comfortable picking up a book and reading to kids and engaging in those, just like we just said our teachers are. And so some of the discrete math skills, look at that in your districts, look at that in your data right now, and let us know how they're doing, because I'm concerned about that.
Van Dieven says it's important to know what was effective for Missouri students during the pandemic, where inequities exist, and where to apply resources. The MAP testing window is open through May 28th. Meanwhile, school districts in Missouri and throughout the nation are making decisions about how to use significant new funding available through the American Rescue Plan. Part of that new law includes $7.1 billion to help close the digital divide in education and give school districts flexibility to meet local needs. In Missouri, it's estimated that as many as 23% of students do not have adequate internet access at home to allow them to do schoolwork online. The National School Boards Association is asking the Federal Communications Commission to distribute the new federal funding through the current E-rate program. NSBA's Chief Advocacy Officer, Chip Slavin, told those attending MSBA's Legislative Forum the money will help provide devices and internet connectivity to students, teachers, and others.
It's a complex, complicated problem, but it is not one. If you hear a legislator or a member of Congress saying, "Well, we just gave you $7 billion, so we fixed the problem," I can assure you, we have not fixed the problem. It's a help. It's a blessing to get it. It's going to make a difference for some students temporarily. But long term, this has got to be a key part. We're talking about school infrastructure, and we're talking about equity, that we focus on closing this homework gap.
NSBA is emphasizing to the FCC the very different challenges public schools are facing with the digital divide based on their location, economic situation, and other factors, and that no one solution works for every school district or community. If you were just elected to your school board last month, congratulations and welcome to school board service. You are probably aware state law requires new board members to complete 18 and a half hours of training in your first 12 months of service. MSBA's free Certified Board Member Essential Training is approved by the State Board of Education to fulfill that requirement. A member of the Holden R3 Board of Education and a member of the MSBA Board of Directors, Georgia Jarman, believes it's important for newly elected board members to participate in the training as soon as possible.
I think one thing that is important to know is that we've all been to school, and so we believe that we know everything there is to know about school. But the reality is being a school board member is really an involved job. And to do it right, you need to understand the law, you need to understand your role, and you need to understand that everything you do needs to be guided by what's best for kids.
You can complete 10 and a half hours of training online and attend virtual or in-person interactive sessions for the remaining 8 hours. See the MSBA website for additional details. MSBA's Igniting Great Ideas Summit is set for June 18th and 19th in Springfield. This event features a wide range of topics and speakers related to school board leadership and current issues facing boards of education. We'll also be holding our June delegate assembly at the summit, when delegates will be electing statewide officers for the coming year. Every MSBA member board is entitled to have at least one voting delegate at the delegate assembly, and we urge your school board to be represented at this important meeting. You can watch video interviews with the candidates.
We made it pretty close to the end there. I was going to say it's almost over. Yeah, I think we're good. Thanks, Brent.
Come on, Brent. Finish your thought.
Dramatic pause.
It's all right.
Live from Columbia.
Can you kill it? Pull the plug.
We're good.
So a couple of things that just stand out to me.
Yeah.
One is it's interesting to hear the commissioner talk about taking a real-time look at how we're doing with math, because the truth is these math tests aren't gonna give us any real-time information, and it makes me grateful that we've taken the steps we did to do NWA, where we're getting real-time feedback about how kids are doing in math, because that's really, you know, we're gonna be able to look back maybe many months down the road, but we're getting to do that in our district real time. And the digital divide as well, I just think of all the work that our administration did to get the Chromebooks and even internet access to our kids, and I'm grateful for that. So I'll draw some positive things out of it that are a little bit different for Affton, maybe than a lot of the districts in our state. Anything else about that? MSBA. Okay, moving on to 5.03, Professional Development Committee Report. Dr. McGee.
Good evening, all. I wanted to give you an update from our last gathering for the year. The Professional Development Committee met and kind of discussed a couple of things that were sort of goals that we wanted to accomplish not only this year, but also to draft some potential goals for next year. So some of the key outcomes you see there is looking at engaging some of our staff with professional development this summer, also reviewing kind of our tentative plans for back to school, and then finally giving us some feedback on some program goals that you will no doubt at least see in the program evaluation in June. So that is our PDC update. Questions?
I think we're good.
Beautiful. Thank you all.
Thank you. Moving on to section 6, citizen comments limited to agenda items. We do not have any citizen comments that I'm aware of. Okay, moving on to section 7, school improvement items. Mr. Levinson.
All right, we have 7.01, which would be the library media program evaluation. Ms. Ratliff, see her way back in the corner.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have Ann join us here at the podium if you have any questions, and then if there's anything you want to mention to them that as they're getting ready for anything they may have questions about.
Nothing except for you can imagine the challenge of being librarians and not being able to use the library for the elementary buildings, especially. We weren't even in the library until March, and so quite a different year this year for us, but I am open to any questions you have, anything you're concerned about.
Yeah, not a concern, just a comment and a compliment. I mean, what I read about kind of updating the collection, focus on social emotional learning for the youngsters, diversity, connectivity, for online content, and I just think that that's all, positive stuff that, I see public libraries doing. I've got a slew of library friends across the country that are always talking about, that libraries are not obsolete because of the technology. They are, enhanced by the technology. And so I was really just encouraged when I read that as far as, the middle and high school and that kind of a focus. It jumped out at me, and I encourage us to just kind of keep our eye on that. I think that's great. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. We're ready to get back to the swing of things the way they have been in the past. But it was a good learning curve for all of us, and a challenge.
It was really good to read about the process, and I agree. It's good for us to get a picture inside of what you're trying to do there. I've asked this in the past of predecessors, et cetera, but how do we determine the age appropriateness of books? I'm especially thinking of Manier and Gotch. Is there a process that's gone through, or how do you manage that?
There's some guidelines set up through DESE and also ISTE technologies and stuff, but we have different resources that we use that evaluate books, thousands of books every year, and they do it on basis of different things, the language, the content, different aspects like that. So obviously elementary, we focus on books that are more appropriate for our kids' ages, even though the kids that'll come in my library, I can speak, will say, oh, do you have the Hunger Games? I have them at home, but they're not appropriate for your age here. But my mom said I could read it, or whatever it is. I said, well, that is so great. You can take care of that at home, but I can't carry it here. Mm-hmm. So
a lot of times we'll get, at the lower levels, we'll get requests for books that we don't feel are okay for them to use and read in the school, but are free to read at home. And so that we do have guidelines that we cover. And I know for Manier and myself at Gotch, we collaborate with each other when we can. We used to have days set up where we could collaborate together as librarians and stuff. And that's not available anymore, but so, you know, Jen and I find ourselves texting and calling each other to try to say, hey, did you hear of this? We also try to go to workshops on what's new in school libraries, and that didn't happen this year, or last year actually, because of COVID, but they do have a virtual one. We just felt like it might not be the same as getting to actually get our hands on the books and look at those. So there are a lot of different ways that we evaluate the books, but we do try to make sure that they are age appropriate. And they don't have as much of an issue at the middle school and high school with that, but ours is kind of, we have to appease our students, but in a way that makes them feel okay about the content that we can carry.
Well, I was reading the report and also thinking about the picture of Rogers looking down the hallway with all the different flags. There's a lot of cultures there and a lot of different approaches at home. And I just, I was thinking, I sent a message to Dr. Brock asking him about, talking about, and he came back and pointed some of the policies back to me of how we can approach things with parents and some of the different perspectives there.
And I know that we have in my library, and I'm sure in the others, I don't know all of their titles, but we have a lot of books that are both in their native languages or about their countries for a lot of the kids that have come to our schools. And so they have the ability in my library, and I'm sure the others, to check out the books. We have, for example, Bosnian books that are in English in Bosnian, so the parents can read with the student on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where the parent at home might not be able to do that if they brought home the English language book. And so we do offer opportunities like that, but also it's fun to, I have a lot of books that are on the spoken language, and so it's fun to see the kids who speak Chinese say, oh, we do this word means blah, blah, blah. And so the kids in our building, when we can check out books, are oftentimes the 400s where the language books are gone all the time. They're in tatters, because they're used so often, which is really a neat thing to hear them sharing their backgrounds and history and teaching while they're learning. Well, it's like a neat thing.
No, I was just gonna, I didn't know there were more comments, please.
No. This is more just kind of thinking of the opportunity for the future. As I read the goals for each of the buildings, I can see some of the threads that tie through them, and then even in the conversation you're having. And so it just makes me go to, would it make sense to have sort of an overarching theme to those goals? And it sounds like you guys have had a hard time, especially this last year, communicating with each other. You haven't had a day where you were doing that. But
right. Well, and we used to have days allowed for that, for all four of us to meet and talk about spiraling and stuff like that. That just hasn't been, what word do I use? It hasn't been set up that way for us. So it's since Jen at Manier and I have similar lessons and topics and stuff, we usually collaborate on our own time between us by email and texting with the other two, but their two programs are very similar and our two programs are very similar, but the four aren't necessarily similar. But we do have communication that we can do on our own time to, join together and enforce.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good to see you guys in person this year.
The administration recommends, and I so move, that the board approve the library media program evaluation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any other further discussion or comments at this time? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, we have 7.02, which would be the Board of Education Subcommittee on Early Childhood Update. Dr. Brock, I believe you are going to lead this for us?
Yeah, I'll ask, I met with Bridget as I was putting this together, so certainly allow her to chime in if there's anything that I miss, and the rest of the board to see if there's anything that stuck out. I think the last time we met, there was a couple things that I was gonna follow up on, and that's in the slides here. Basically, that kind of pertained to how aware are some of our current families at Mainier of the early childhood tuition-based programming, and then also the PAT program. So those are two slides you'll notice in there. We tried to get as good a participation as possible. So about 85 families over kindergarten, first grade, second grade, filled that out. And you can kind of see it was very similar. About 3 out of every 4 families are aware of the programs. And and when I sort of focused on those that weren't, I tried to find if there were any themes I could pull out on the ones that weren't aware. There weren't any themes, so it wasn't like 5 of those 15 responses all said this. Some of them, basically said there would have been no way for me to know. Like, I just moved into the area, so there really wasn't a chance for me to know. So I was trying to glean what are some of those things that we can do. And I certainly think we will continue to look at that and continue to evaluate that. But as far as reporting that out to the board, I couldn't really land on a common theme for those who didn't know about it. And so I really think it's just taking every opportunity. So as families enroll a school-age student, how do we make sure to see whether they have any non-school age students that we can maybe tap into right at that moment where they're enrolling. Just things like that, and anything that crosses our mind. And so that's one piece of information that I followed up on that was specific to kind of a survey that we gave. And then we already know which of those families that are currently in K1 and 2 that actually participated in our early childhood programming. So on average, it's about a third. So about a third of every cohort, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, participated in our tuition-based programming. So I thought that could be of interest to the board to know what is that level at, and that's what we found to be the case in regards to our families that are currently at Mainier. So those were kind of the new pieces of information.
Is that just in any programming here, or was it specific to kids who are in preschool?
That one was just the kind of the preschool tuition based. The thing that I did, this building here, I didn't disaggregate out, and I don't believe we included PAT in there. And so that's something that I didn't ask our data coordinator to run anything with PAT. It was just the tuition-based enrollment that she ran that report on.
So about a third of our kids have been through our tuition preschool program.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And so those were kind of the new items that are in there. I did update kind of where we are with filling slots in this building, and so that certainly continues to be something that we're working on. I believe Lauren, Noel, and Erica are communicating on a social media message that's going to go out to specifically target the options we still have open. So putting out there that we still have full day PK slots, we have half-day slots, your ages 3 and 4 slots, just to get that information out there and try to draw as much attention to the program right now as we can. Certainly we'll continue to leave that enrollment open until all the slots are filled up, but really doing everything we can to draw people's attention to that right now. So that'll probably be going out shortly on social media in regards to trying to get those remaining slots filled as quick as possible. And then just a small update on a couple other things that are becoming more and more relevant. The summer program, we're going to start a summer program here similar to how we've done in the past, and you can see that that's filling up, or that's progressing similar to how other summers have gone. So excited to hear about that and kind of get the summer program back to where it typically has been for this particular building. And then I think the other thing I layered in there, kind of pivoting to PAT, since we've started re-engaging families in April, letting them know we can arrange in-person visits, or we could arrange some sort of face-to-face visit, even if it's not literally being in the home as we traditionally do. We have gained quite a few new families, so I believe we're over 30 new families that, didn't necessarily want to do virtual options, or they had declined a virtual visit. So that's also starting to progress in regards to getting families re-engaged with the PAT visits that we're able to do in person. So that's another piece of information I layered in there just as an update. So with that, I'm kind of open to, and then certainly something that you guys might have a little bit more conversation about, I layered in, and I spoke with Bridget about what some of the next steps could be. So the slides that I prepared kind of allude to possibly doing something at the next board meeting, more of a workshop style. I know this is kind of just meant to be an agenda item where don't spend a whole lot of time on it tonight, knowing that we may have a workshop at the next meeting where we can certainly pick up any of these topics as well as anything else. So just a way to keep the conversation going in regards to putting this on the agenda tonight.
Yeah, Travis and I both talked about, we'll send out like a survey to see what top 3 things that each of us really want to see with the program in general, and then we'll go from there. We'll meet and pick 1 or 2, and and just decide what it's like. If we're all on the same page, it's number 1 thing, 7 out of 1. We're gonna go with that. So that was something we discussed in our meeting. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I would say kind of the biggest takeaway is you probably will get a follow-up maybe later this week with kind of soliciting what are those key priorities that maybe have crossed your mind throughout this conversation, and how would you capture that in a sentence or a short phrase. And if Bridget and I look at everyone's input separately, can we find themes in there? So we may be able to bucket, I think these items speak to this type of approach or this type of priority, and then that way part of the workshop can be evaluating how close are a lot of those comments, how do we have any that are kind of out here by themselves, and so does that mean that's not a priority, whereas the ones that we were able to group together must be a priority if several folks have identified those. So really that meeting will be spent kind of processing, is there agreement around how we've kind of tried to organize those so that we don't have 10 different really important priorities. We may have 1 or 2 or 3, and then what is the best way to, I guess, characterize those so the board is comfortable that captures if we gave that direction. I think that captures what we would be really happy for the district to work on.
Yeah, that'd be a really good step, and I like the last bullet. And the subcommittee early childhood. End.
I really appreciate the survey. I don't know why it feels so meaningful, but even just having a grasp of like, okay, 1/3 of the kids are utilizing this building, and maybe I should have known that before, but I didn't, and that helps give some framework to me about.
You can't pull that number out of the other numbers, so yeah, that was helpful.
So we just asked for that. I appreciate it. That was quick turnaround time to get us the information. So.
Okay, that was for information purposes. I'm sorry, is there more?
Yep, no,
I just lost
I'm
my
good.
glasses.
You have to just want to make sure if there's anything else before we move on. From the
One just
board.
sort of process question. So once you guys send us that so that we start thinking about our priorities, if we have a question, if we're looking back through our information and we say, oh, like what's the number here? How should we direct questions? Because I don't want to bombard anybody. I mean, Dr. Breck, do you want us to reach out to you if we're trying to get information?
I think you could start with me, and then if I need to redirect it, like if it's more of a budget finance question, I'll get Steve involved, or if it's more of a enrollment question here at the building level, I can reach out to Lauren and research that if you're needing some follow-up before you I guess submit your priorities.
Start shooting them all over. We don't need to question everybody in the district. We'll start with you.
But I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody kind of comes to the table with, even if it doesn't land in the priorities. Sometimes somebody will say something that I'd be like, oh yeah, I didn't, like, yeah, absolutely. So, thank you.
That was for information purposes only.
Yep, you got it.
All right, so we are moving on to section 8, curriculum. 8.01, curriculum projects for first read. And we had quite a collection of projects.
And I will warn you, it's best to get started on June 1st as soon as this meeting's over, because they are coming in hot.
Yay.
It's exciting, but at the same time, it does make for a daunting task to prepare over the next couple weeks. So I'm sending the flare to just poke ahead if you can.
And I appreciated your reminder for us. I mean, we get to pour over all of this, so that's why it's provided, but we're not actually approving everything. So when your time is getting limited, if we're looking at more than 20 projects at a time, I appreciate you reminding us what we really need to focus in on for that process. Anybody have questions about French and yearbook and public speaking and facts and makerspace and art and math and Project Lead the Way and so many things that we got to take a tour of.
All the broken links.
Yeah, and that's going to be a work in progress, because as soon as we get it ready to go, DESE decides to undergo some sort of shift in their website provider. So the good news is that we know where all those are, and it may be simply a hashtag or a dashed line off, and we can find them. But yeah, I wish there was a way. I have that 90s song about the broken wings, but broken links in my head.
Take these broken links.
Thanks for the earworm.
There it is.
Stuck in your
There it is. The rest of the day.
Yes. So on the makerspace one, sorry,
Yeah.
I can't stay away from those. That's a rotation. How often do the kids get in there? Do you have a
Yeah,
sense
it
of
used to
that?
be one day every week, and this year it made sense to make a shift with that, and they've been doing a week, so basically 1 week a month, and they would be able to stay and sustain within that. And the feedback from both the teachers and from Dr. Bean has been that has been, and Dr. Powers, has been really beneficial, because they're able to see projects through longer.
Right.
They're redesigning the way that classroom works, because they're able to sustain investigations longer. So that's been exciting to see, and was a great opportunity to get staff members together to talk through that.
That's great.
It's been great for the other specials, I think, too, just as anecdotally. I mean, to like really focus in on music for a week, I think you can come away with something different than if you're just in there, once a week for an hour. So it's, who knew? It was
Who
a
knew?
great move to try
All it
it.
took was a pandemic.
Anything else? Everybody wide-eyed, just even looking at the list.
Nobody wants to talk about yearbook?
I spent a lot of time.
Miss Loris was just here.
I know, I was thinking that.
Okay, so that was just our first read on those. If people have questions or comments, you can follow up in the week to come. And then 8.02, these are our curriculum projects for second read and approval. This includes MyPath, 8th grade band, ESL, the labs that we looked at, choir for 6th, 7th, and 8th, industrial technology for 6th, 7th, and 8th, the treble choir, and honors geometry. I don't believe we sent you away with anything too big last time. Anybody have any follow-up? All right, the administration recommends, and I so move, that the board approve the curriculum as presented. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you. Anything additional? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. And thank you for letting us know we should start looking at the
Yeah,
next one already.
appreciate that.
The draft is in there.
Here it is, yes, it's in there. All right, section 9, finance, Mr. Carney.
Yes. Mr. Fedchak, do you want to just lead? It looks like the first one's just the monthly financial statements, expense, revenues, and fund balance.
Yeah, so not a whole lot new on the financial statements. I think the one item that I'll mention, and I don't have a lot of information on yet, is that we're starting to get some more information about the third round of ESSER funds. I believe that the way that they're setting those up is they're essentially going to release 2/3 of the amount to all of the districts once they have it. That'll be sometime in the next month, probably. So they have haven't released any information on what we should do with it when we get it. But I imagine that will be coming shortly. So just, I guess, keep an eye on these reports each month, and obviously I'll mention how that goes when it happens. But I imagine that it'll probably happen between now and the next time that I do these reports. So there will probably be something significantly different the next time that we look at.
So just, I'm trying to, so legally, I mean, is that gonna be just its own fund, its own account that we're held to a strict way of?
So, yeah, they're still coming up with the guidelines on how we can use it, how we should code it, how we should do anything, essentially. But they're trying to release, I think, in the next week, some of that information. So it will be an individual account. My guess is what's going to happen is we're going to get a pretty good amount of revenue within this fiscal year, and we're probably not going to have any expenses to offset it within this fiscal year. So that's going to have some sort of impact on our fund balances, at least for a year. So we'll have to see what the stipulations are and kind of talk about that.
And do you envision like a specific team taking a look at it? Or I'm just trying to wrap my brain around how, I mean, like, it's a very unusual circumstance.
It is.
So.
It's just a little bit murky. Right now, there's, I talked to Dr. Rock about it this morning, there does appear to be someone potentially designated at DESE that was put in charge of doing this. And they're kind of, I'll say they're like slowly saying, all right, we're going to send out an email that says this. We're going to send out an email that says this. And then eventually you're going to get all the information. So I think my guess is sometime in the next week to 2 weeks we'll get most of the information, followed shortly by a pretty significant deposit of those funds.
And there will be different pockets of funds. I was looking at some earlier this week, like they were for funding that's going to be available to all of the school districts, that is just for recruitment and retention of teachers and kind of growing your own and that type of thing. So there's going to be some very specific ones. I haven't read it about any of the other ones.
There's that specific one. That we haven't really received a whole lot of information on that. This is, what we're receiving information on is just, I think, the main part that's designated for schools. I think a lot of the stipulations are similar to the second ESSER for this specific group of money. But there might be other portions of it that we're not even aware of yet.
So good luck.
Yes.
Because it looks like it's kind of being parsed out in sections like that, and it's like, and then spend money. There you go.
And Krista and I have kept, within our financials, we have kept a separate kind of spreadsheet of what these funds are, how much we've gotten, what we've used them for, and all of that. And that's something that I can share, at least up to this point. Going forward with this stuff, we don't have quite as good of an idea of what we use it for, but that's definitely something that we have, and once we get that allocation, we should probably talk about it.
Great.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Any sense of any shifts in the tax landscape at all?
So we're kind of like, I guess, in the lull between the storms right now. So the assessor's office is still trying to wrap up their assessments because it's reassessing year. So that preliminary assessment for this coming year was at 10%, and we're just kind of waiting until they finish that for next year. For this year, I do think we're still kind of waiting on our end of year stuff. The protested taxes, which will give us a pretty decent idea of what this year's current tax percentage looks like, those are supposed to be released. I think they said they missed the May cutoff for it, and it should be here in June. So we're probably going to be right to the line on knowing how much we know and when we need to make that fourth budget adjustment on it.
Sure.
Yeah, I had a question, and I don't have my notes from what it was called, but remember that TIF overpayment or payment thing that just kind of showed up, and did you find anything else more about that, or if it's regular? I'm sorry.
Working on it.
Okay.
I hope we have something by the time we go to adopt the budget in June.
Okay. I was just curious if I know we talked about it a little bit, and if we had heard more on it.
Yeah.
What exactly is it called again?
So that is the Kenrick Plaza TIF that we're
Henrik Plaza to.
And the payment that you were talking about, they're called pilots, which is an acronym, it's payments in lieu of taxes.
Gotcha. I just don't want to have to go, you remember that thing again? I'll refer
That surprised all of us because we didn't expect it.
Pleasantly, I mean, incoming is always better than outgoing, so, thank you.
That was for information. So 9.02 bid awards on Chromebooks. Steve, you want to give us some highlights on that one?
Yeah, so I'll do my best. We got a lot of bids for Chromebooks. What's recommended is Y&S, Lenovo Chromebooks, which we've used in the past. Y&S is the low-cost bidder. These were just a little bit over what we were anticipating, about $40,000 more than we were anticipating, but as we've seen in many industries right now, costs are increasing. So I think we probably were lucky to get them at the price that we did, and we are working on getting them ordered and here as soon as possible so we don't have a debacle like we did with the ones that never showed up.
Is this a company we've used before? I don't remember their name.
I am not aware of if we've used them before or not. That would be something I would have to ask Adam, but I did talk to him today. He did not have any concerns with the company.
Yeah, I talked to him today too, and I feel like he would have mentioned if, you know, if we had gone through them again, so I don't know that we have. Or at least not for Chromebooks or this volume.
Yeah, I'll say I don't remember them winning a bid at this volume,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if we've used them for other smaller purchases or not.
Do we look at their performance in other, do they have performance with other school districts that we're able to reference or anything like that?
You know, I'm not positive about that either, just because it's a, you know, it's pretty much their performance is do the Chromebooks get here or not. So,
Okay.
you know, that's not,
Yeah.
for this type of purchase, not necessarily a reference.
Yeah, they're just delivering them, right?
Although it does say on-site warranty service with YSF.
Yes, they do. I do know that that was something that Adam wanted and something that they were able to provide.
And that's been, in the past, that's been kind of a disqualifier on like, well, why wouldn't we recommend a particular bidder even though the price is fairly competitive? And I know Adams felt very strongly that we put that in the specs, and so when people bid, they know that we would prefer and we would like on-site support if that's necessary and requested. So that typically is, I think, something that's looked at very, very heavily when we try to figure out who to recommend.
Which grades are these for? Does anybody remember? It's 4 classes. It's the kindergartners, and when else do we swap out the whole?
I think these, the short answer is grades 3 through 12, but there's a, I guess, refresh cycle on like what grade level will get the brand new devices, what devices will roll up to a particular grade level, and so I'd have to look at where Adam is at portioning that out, but yeah, he's definitely got that in the works so that it's, I guess not, the Chromebooks don't literally just stay here until they breathe their last breath, and then.
I imagine we've been a bit harder on them this year than in past years.
Yeah.
They've definitely gotten their use this year, so.
Yeah.
I think, so this order, his bid included 200 touchscreen kindergartners, so those are specifically for those new kindergartners and the only grade that we use those for, and then 600 other devices. I want to say it's 10th grade and then subtract 3 years each time, because I know 10th grade is one of the big grades that they swap them out with. But yeah, those other ones in the middle, I'm not quite positive.
Any other questions? All right, administration recommends, and I so move, the approval of the purchase of approximately 800 devices from Y&S for the estimated cost of $2,444.760. No, sorry.
No.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Wrong decimal point. $244,760.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Simple math.
Just because you say it again.
A second.
Yes, do I have a second? All those In favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Let's see if I do a better job with this next one. Steve, you want to say a little bit about the laptops?
Yeah, so very similar situation. These ones actually came in a little bit under, about $20,000 under our budget, which was good. But YNS again came ahead with the lowest bid, and these are staff device replacements.
Any questions or comments?
I got one question. Like, when you get a bid on, there's like different, like, models. Is it just because like Staples or this RTI, they just carried, that was the closest thing that you were looking for?
Yeah,
essentially?
So there's a combination. It's, when you have as many bidders and as many products on the line, there's a couple different things. One of them is they'll bid something that they think is what they have in stock and can meet demand what they think is as close to your specifications as possible. And then other times they'll just throw something out there hoping that you choose it because it might be a little bit cheaper. So it's kind of a combination of everything when you're dealing with something where there's, you could go, there's probably 100 different laptops that you can buy.
Oh, sure.
I'll say that the ones that YNS quoted are kind of, we've used Lenovo's in the past, and the Yoga is kind of a new standard that we bought. I know the devices that we just replaced that were corrupted as part of the ransomware attack were the same devices, so kind of fits the mold of what we were looking for.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Anyone else? All right. Administration recommends, and I so move, the approval of the purchase of approximately 100 laptops from YNS for the estimated amount of $101,020. Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Let me just continue on.
stick with you.
All right. Section 10.01, summer project update. Steve, is this one getting tossed to you?
Yep. Yeah. So I'll go ahead. I actually kind of combined
You want to, yeah.
the next one on the same slideshow. So I'll pull a couple of items that are on the slideshow attached to the next one. So since summer hasn't started yet, we do have some things to update on. The big project obviously that we've talked a lot about is the retaining wall. I did put a picture of the rendering in there that is getting closer and closer to being a reality. So I also put in a couple of pictures so you can kind of see where they are in the progress of that and kind of what that looks like. So what you're seeing in the picture is them setting up the forms and the form liners for that concrete wall. So the areas where the men are standing there on the scaffolding, all of that will be backfilled with rock and dirt and then paved over for that upper parking lot. So you can see there's quite a bit of earth movement that needs to happen, but good news is they're putting up those forms and everything. We think the concrete's going to start to be poured sometime soon if the weather cooperates within the next week or so. That's when they'll start, and they'll probably continue that process well into June. So that's definitely moving along there. Still on the schedule. August 1st is the goal there to be completed with that project. But that is a very large wall.
Can I ask a question since he's here? Are there, one thing I'm not seeing that I'm really surprised at is no dead men going back into the hill. Is that in the design, or do you know?
I'm sorry, say that again.
No structures going back from the wall into the hill. Dead men is one for it.
If you see the picture right there, what he's walking on is the extended footing.
Gotcha.
So
That's what, yeah. I thought it was gravel.
13 feet behind the wall, monolithic with the foundation.
Got it.
So the next picture is kind of, I guess, a little bit better of a view of that you're looking at a footing with rebar sticking about, waiting to get tied into for, the vertical part. You can see before all those forms were set in place, what that looked like. So that's obviously on the very far corner of the wall, at the end of it, and there's where it's going to turn out to a new drive. You can also see that how they had to top of the picture, there's a mountain of dirt that's waiting until that's built to be backfilled. And then the last picture with that is, this is a new retaining wall that's up near the baseball field. There are two block retaining walls that were included in this project that were definitely smaller in scope. Those are both completely done. There's this one, which is a pretty good sized wall, kind of cleaning up that baseball field area. And then there's one that pretty much no one's ever going to see that's on the very north side of our property and actually faces our neighbors, and will be kind of, I guess, on the other side of that drive, kind of holding everything up on that side. So those are done at this point. Our other big project is a performance contract. So they have been doing some exterior work. They've been doing a lot of planning, ordering of equipment, but really trying to wait until students are out of the building to do the majority of the work. I did try to post pictures of what was going on. Pictures are not as easy to come by for a performance contract as they are for the retaining wall. The two things that you're seeing, one is a big hole outside of the pool. They did dig all of that up. If you didn't know and drove back there, you would think it was probably part of the retaining wall project, but that used to be blacktop. They tore it all out, and they're going to pour a new concrete pad to set the pool HVAC unit on. So they're working on all of that right now. And then the smaller picture on the right, again, if you haven't been down there, you wouldn't think anything of it, but where that ladder is sitting on that concrete pad is actually where our two giant steam boilers used to sit. So those have already been disassembled and taken out of there, and they kind of like a clean slate sitting there, waiting to go. They were able to do that as soon as we shut the heat on for the year. So hopefully we don't have any really cold May days. Not gonna happen in high school. And then the last one that I put on here is making your site improvements, and obviously that one's just so front and center that it's really not a project that can happen until school is out. So, working with the same contractors we're retaining wall in high school, so they're ready to go as soon as they can, probably right after the last student walks out the door.
Great. So, yeah, I think we'll just split this up between the two. So this is the first one. Got any questions, Mike?
This is good stuff. It's good to see.
All right, you want to keep going?
Yeah,
10.02.
Okay. The other thing that we wanted to talk about is capital improvements for next year. So we've gotten in kind of a rhythm of providing kind of a list of what projects we have slated or have in mind for capital improvements for the coming year. So that's kind of what we wanted to take a chance to do here. Before we did that, I did want to revisit past projects. I think about a year ago, we talked about things that we had completed, items that were still kind of left out there. And so what I did was I posted our top 20 list. This is the list that's still remaining from the shred process that we did, I guess, close to 10 years ago at this point. I did update it. When we looked at this last year, we still had some Rogers work going on and things like that. So everything that is crossed off in red has been completed off of this list. The only thing that was on here that is not crossed off at this point is number 14, the artificial turf for the football field. So did want to revisit that. We've done I think, a good job of getting through the things that our community said was important during that process, which is good. So the next item on the list is looking at what are our plans for the coming year. And so what we did was when we presented the preliminary budget, these are essentially the numbers that were in the line items for each of these, but this is a look at, okay, what's going to make up those numbers. So Krista and I sat down with Jeff and Ed and talked about what types of things there were, what types of things were still on our list. So the top two items we've already talked about. The retaining wall obviously is going to pour into next fiscal year. So we're going to finish up any of the construction buildings. It's going to be about $800,000, I think, depending on where exactly the buildings fall with June 30th. About $800,000 is my guess for what it will take to finish that up next year. Main year, we have $200,000. We bid that out. We don't really anticipate getting any bills during the month of June for it. So that should all pretty much be July and August that we're paying that out. The high school field improvements, 1.5 million. I'm gonna skip over that one for a second because I have some following slides on it. And you can see underneath that, most of these items are building automation, roof replacements, we have $500,000. So really trying to get at some of the infrastructure, some of the things that we know we have a pretty substantial amount of work to do in trying to move that forward. We do still have several buildings that aren't automated. We've really liked being able to get 3 buildings, or well, I guess by the end of the summer we'll have most of 3 buildings automated, but still going to continue down that path and be a little more efficient. And then the last 2 items are just kind of almost annual maintenance things that we put in there, just taking care of our asphalt, making sure our parking lots are in good shape, and then ceilings and light replacements, and mainly their ceilings are in bad shape, so we'll try to hit a couple of things there. On the bottom of that, you'll see that I separated SR2 funds and put $1 million into performance contracts. So when we talked about doing that performance contract in the first place, we had talked about kind of putting that over 3 fiscal years. Because of the SR2 funds and the allowable uses for it, it fits right in line with that performance contract. So building air quality and upgrades and controls are one of the main things that you can use it for, and it just happened to coincide with us doing a very large project that would work for. So since that fits in, we moved that down there and said, okay, this is a very easy, good use of these funds, and what that does is it opened up a little bit more in our capital improvements that we can use for things that maybe wouldn't quite fit that mold. Which brings me back to talking about the high school field improvements. So what we're talking about with the high school field improvements is several things. Artificial turf is obviously going to be the main component of it. It was on the list, the only thing out of the top 20 that we've not crossed off yet. So that was one of the reasons why, when we've gone back these lists every year, it's always been still hanging around right there. It's something that we need to do. I do kind of think the stars are aligning for it a little bit this year for a couple reasons. One of them is that it's the last thing that's not crossed off on our list. The other thing is the ESSER funds, making the funds available, or a majority of the funds available for the project. And then, one other area that I put on the natural versus artificial turf slide to talk through, and looking at this from more of a facilities and finance point of view. We're kind of in a transitional period, I would say, with our grounds department right now. We've gone pretty close to 6 weeks without really, probably even longer than that, without really having a grounds department for a variety of reasons. Having a plan to do artificial turf could really open up some options for us and potential savings. We've been using, kind of on an emergency basis, a contracted lawn service just to keep our grass cut while we didn't have any employees. And that's been going pretty well, and something that I think we're going to do at least for a little bit until we can, get some plans in place and potentially bid that out going forward. Wanted to look at it kind of side by side with that going on and say, what are our costs the way that we've been doing things? What are our costs going forward? If we were to do something like this with the field, are there potential savings involved? What exactly would that look like for us? So on the left-hand side, you can see there's 3 things that I kind of have listed out there. Grounds crew, $50,000. So that number is calculated based off of what we used to do with 2 full-time grounds people being replaced essentially with 2 seasonal workers and mostly just using a lawn service that would cut everything, cut all of our properties outside of a turf field, obviously. So that $50,000 would be a savings in that department to set it up that way. The water and fertilizer and seed, we spend about $20,000 a year to water our field. So you can tell when you're looking through our water bills and our water budget, and all of our buildings at the high schools is significantly more. In fact, it's almost all of the other buildings combined, and it's the field is the difference there. And then fertilizer and seed, the $10,000 was, going back a couple of years and looking through our bills and seeing that I only pulled specific line items that said football field to them. So it could potentially be more than that, but I was able to pull a couple of years in a row, $10,000 of that. As far as cost for the turf field goes, on the other hand, it is an expensive project. It's $1.5 million is kind of what the estimated budget for that would be. That is not just for the turf field. We would also include a new scoreboard, a fully digital scoreboard. It would include a press box that would be put kind of behind the existing bleachers. It would also include visitors bleachers put kind of in the area where the existing press box is right now. It would include upgrading most of the track and field items that are kind of on the perimeter of the area. And then it would also include any sort of water retention that might come up from MSD. So after we would spend that $1.5 million there, there's a couple of maintenance things that you do on an annual basis, but not with any significant cost or time, like you would with your natural field. So the products, even since my time in starting in Affton for doing this, have gotten significantly better. The products that we would probably specify for doing this, they tend to have a life of about 10 to 15 years. And the cost of replacing them after 10 to 15 years is only about $250,000. So that's another area that has come way down in cost in the past few years. They're able to do that at a much better rate. So beyond that, I also did a little bit of research, reached out to area CFOs about their high schools and saw who had turf fields kind of in the area for our knowledge. So about 70% of the high schools in not just St. Louis County, but surrounding counties, further counties, already have turf fields. There's about 20% that responded that they don't have it, but they're just waiting for funding. So several of them said they were waiting to include it in the bond issue, something along those lines, but really funding was the thing that they were waiting for. And then there was another 10% that said that they didn't have any current plans, and it really was a combination of people who were just like, we've never talked about it, and then several people who said, we prefer the natural grass field. So that's, kind of, I thought that was interesting, just to go and see who had this. The next page is a turf rendering. So we have talked to several vendors who do this type of work, and this was a rendering that was given to us of what that field might look like. Obviously, none of the other upgrades that we talked about, the scoreboard or anything, are really included on here. This is just kind of a snapshot of what that field might look like. There is still input that's needed from coaches and students and things like that, but just kind of preliminarily, this is kind of a final product that we could expect. And then really, the next part is just a timeline of what that project might look like. So the best time to do a turf installation would be immediately following football season. It's probably about a 4-month project from beginning to end. So in order to kind of hit that timeline, we would want to have kind of our specification and RFP put out sometime over the summer with the hope to approve an actual contractor in amount, probably late summer. I would say August-ish would be good. That would get them started right after football season, probably late October, beginning of November. We've got to finish the project probably within the last couple of weeks of February in time for spring sports, soccer, to get started on it. So that's really what we're looking like for a timeline on it. I think it's good because it allows plenty of time also to finish up that big retaining wall project that would, don't really want those two things happening at the same time. Yeah. So it should fit right into what we're looking to do there. So I know that's a lot of information. Happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. Yes.
Just curious, and with the, and I'm going to butcher the name of the ear, whatever ESSER, the ESSER funds. You know, and you look at that sky view of like the back area with the new parking lot and the new wall and stuff. And so with the addition of ESSER, and maybe we haven't talked about it before, but that baseball field is gonna be the armpit of that back area. Could you possibly in this time figure out, I mean, I know we've never really talked about it per se, but like, you know, is that something that could possibly be included to maybe fix that area too, knowing, you know, that that's gonna be kind of like the highlight of our community with, you know, Friday night sports and soccer games and, you know, that baseball field is, what will be the holdback if we were already doing all this work anyway?
So I have two different ways of answering that. The first one is, I think that area will be improved. So we're looking at, especially since we just did that nice retaining wall, kind of at the end of the parking lot there. I think we're gonna look to do some fencing and dugout upgrades to the baseball field, probably at the end of the retaining wall project anyway. So I would expect that to come. As far as the field conditions of the baseball field, they're not great. Part of that is because we use it sometimes to practice for other sports and it doesn't go well. So I think you'll see improvements in that as well. As far as extending like turf or something to that, I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibility. I would say that it doesn't fit in the budget to do right now. So
Maybe not even turf, but just like, you know, the facelift that it's very desperate.
Yeah, and like I said, I would imagine that by the time fall rolls around, there will be a significant facelift to it already. So that I would expect. But anything beyond that, we haven't had conversations about yet. I do know that the cost of doing a baseball field is pretty much the same as doing the cost of a football field. So
You're talking about AstroTurf.
yeah, turf.
Right, but I mean, if we're keeping it grass though, we're not talking nearly that expense per se.
No.
Just curious, I appreciate it.
Wasn't there talk of doing the dugouts over in the baseball field, or was, maybe I'm just.
Yeah, so we're currently working with our architects on a design to try to upgrade that and to try to have that up and running by the time any of this would occur.
Okay,
So
thanks.
we're hoping, I mean, we can't really get in there and do it now with the retaining wall project.
Sure.
But we're hoping to make some upgrades there. They're not gonna be significantly expensive or anything, but it's just, again, it's another area, it's rusting, falling down fences, and the dugouts aren't in great shape. So yeah, we're gonna do some.
There's a lot of
some
football
upgrades there as
equipment
well.
stored over there too, so.
And it seems like it would take priority.
Yeah.
Ever since we lost the fields across the road at Gunn with that development, we've been beating the heck out of that baseball field. It was a practice field. So you didn't talk about it here, but won't putting turf in allow us to use that main field continuously for lots of things?
Right, and that's, the focus of kind of what I put together was, that's why I said it's from a facilities and finance standpoint. Obviously, there's going to be giant benefits to the students, and that, we can barely use our field now, we barely practice on it, and when we do, we have issues with it during games and things like that. So yeah, there will obviously be a big impact on the students that are there now, and we'll be able to use it for gym classes, which is never done. It would just really help out with having that landlocked space back there to be able to have that giant area not off limits like it typically is.
Right, you have it used continuously instead of just for one sport or two sports.
Exactly.
Well, one thing worth mentioning that some people in this group probably know, but others don't, is that marching band is something that is moving forward. And so this is, it's not even just athletics that are part of what this field needs to be used for.
Activities.
Yeah.
Physics? Build a trebuchet out there.
Lots of
A trebuchet.
Hey, I was there. I was there.
Take out the old dugouts.
For folks who weren't here when these lists were created, the lists have, we went through a long process, but as we come to each thing, which we've done so much, we also then say, yes, we want to move forward on these. Everybody that has been around me for a while knows that I have serious reservations about turf fields. And so as we get to that, it's really about the health and safety of our students and the construction of the turf. And I know that it's improved a lot through the years, but
I think in whatever RFP we do, that we have to be very clear about what kind of chemicals, what it's made of. There's been issues with lead, there are just long-term health issues. So, those are things I haven't looked at in a while, but, so those are concerns that I have. And so as we move forward, and then also keeping the turf field clean and the cleaning products that we use to keep those things going. So there's benefits, but there's also things that we have to review, and it looks really pretty. It really does look pretty. But I just wanted to just share that there's reservations that I have, and so I'd like those to be addressed as we move forward with this as well.
Yeah, I think I appreciate Jeff and Steve and Krista putting this together, and I think really we just want to make sure that you're aware of what we're going to start working on, both from a bid perspective and certainly from what should we be asking to be addressed. And so obviously many of these things, separate of the turf field, still need to come to you for approval. It's just we would like to hope we're working on something that has an opportunity to strongly be considered, and so that's kind of why we wanted to make sure what are those things that you're going to want somebody to speak to, in addition to just the numbers. What is the cost? Who bid on it, and who do we think is going to do the work, right? What are some of those other things that Jeff and Steve can try to put together and ask the possible vendors to speak to, and that we can be aware of in regards to what are some of the things that we need to make a priority going forward if these things are approved. And you're familiar with a lot of these things on the list that have been talked about. So certainly our HVAC or building automation, we've talked about that. We know how many roofs we have in the district and how that, so we're very familiar. I just want to make sure we pause for a little bit more in-depth conversation about this topic, since it's not really been something we've gotten into and spoke at length about for a lot of good reasons. But now that it's something that we feel comfortable recommending, it's appropriate to pause and for this type of conversation. And also, as much as we prepared some information for you tonight from the finance and operations standpoint, we're also happy to bring other information here tonight. We didn't, like I said, we certainly envision this being a collaborative process with staff, students, and families. We just didn't think that was necessary tonight. And so regardless of how we move forward, just know that we want to be inclusive, but at the same time, we don't want to put the cart before the horse and bring things to the table that we could sit here all night and talk about this topic if we wanted to, but just start with a preview and take a temperature of what support there is before we get too far ahead of ourselves.
Patricia, thank you for sharing your concerns the way you did, because I know your feelings are pretty strong. So, well said, but I can't wait to get this going.
Yeah, and I appreciate, hearing the different perspectives of this, because I think there's the financial stewardship. I think there's a bit of an environmental consideration if you think about the water we're using, the fertilizer and that kind of stuff, but then, and then thinking about the chemicals, the maintenance of that, the materials that it's made of, I think it just really exemplifies this isn't, as easy as doing it because we're saving the money or doing it because it looks pretty. And I appreciate those different perspectives. And I think it's going to be, I think it'll be good for us to have that conversation, and then to see how that translates into, a potential, construction RFP and having those considerations. Because I got to tell you, I didn't, until you said it, I didn't think much about it. But there's a weird analogy, but there's like the Christmas tree analogy, and people say, oh well, you buy a live tree and you've planted the tree and cut down the tree, and how's that good for the environment? It's like, well, it's a sustainable thing, because when you buy your plastic tree, all of the stuff that went into making the plastic tree. I mean, there's right. I've just heard that as an analogy in other things, and I think it's appropriate here to just sort of think about what are all those different perspectives and trade-offs. And I think. So I appreciate you bringing those up, Patricia, and I think it's worth really considering when we put that RFP together.
Yeah, and I'll say, from Jeff and I's perspective, we've done a decent amount of research already on what this might look like. As you can imagine, there's a lot of different products out there.
Yeah.
So by the time that we sit down and actually would release an RFP for this, my guess is as being part of the bid. And once we get around to that, we'll have lots and lots of information on those materials and where they are, and that would be something that we'll make clear and provide, and don't have any issue with that whatsoever.
So Steve, one last thing for me anyways, looking at the rendering, I didn't think about it when I looked at it earlier. Is lighting, what's the condition of the lighting and the situation of the lighting we have now, and would that be anything that we would consider with this project?
So, and Jeff, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the lighting that we have up there now is not LED, it is not our current standard, but it's also not that old, and probably not going to be included in this.
It is not going to be included, Steve's correct, it's not that old, but with stadium lighting, you don't see much benefit in moving over to LED unless it's time for your lights to go. You're not saving anything because they only run a couple hours, maybe a couple days a week, so there's no real potential like savings there now. The poles are in great condition, the lights are in great condition, and we'd be looking at, 6-figure increase if we were going to go into it. But at this point, it's not.
I think one thing to consider is a new sound system.
That would come with the school.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Kenny
You read my paper, I just wrote down sound system.
I don't know, I can hear the sound system from my house, so I can only imagine if it got better. Maybe
I won't have to leave my deck if that's the case,
The other thing I'll mention kind of as a reminder is that we just recently redid the track. So,
Yes, we did.
By the time that a project like this would happen, we're gonna have a significantly upgraded stadium area that really should not need a whole lot for a very long time. It will be a very nice looking, state-of-the-art area.
All right. Well, looking forward to more info and whatever discussion is to come. That was for information as well, and I think we're done with the tens.
We are in section 11, personnel items. Mr. Edgar.
Okay, 11.01 staffing changes. So what we have tonight, some new hires. We have a summer maintenance worker district-wide. We have a summer school virtual teacher, K through 8, that'll be remote. We also have 3 stipends. One is a varsity football assistant coach for the high school, freshman football coach for the high school, and another freshman football coach, assistant coach for the high school. And then we also have one groundskeeper for the district that is officially retiring. And then we have a instructional staff assistant from Gotch that is resigning, and a varsity football assistant coach that is resigning. So, the administration recommends, and I so move, the approval of the staffing changes as presented. May I have a second?
Second.
Are there any discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by the same? Any abstentions? Looks like motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Section 12, citizen comments. I believe we don't have citizen comments for this section either tonight. So then we'll move on to 13, board comments. Well, that snuck up on us. We're just chugging along, and then we made it to board comments. Patricia, would you like to start?
I would, thank you. I wanted to, again, thank my colleagues here on the board who attended the professional learning community on last Thursday evening. And I found a lot of benefit in talking to colleagues at different school districts, and we focused on working with legislators and what was going on in Jeff City and how we might, be advocates in the future for public education. We had 17, I think, different school districts that showed up, and we had 4 board members from Affton. So I'm always just impressed with how we show up and are engaged in those conversations. So thank you all for that. And this team will be gathering again and trying to put together something for the fall. So I'll keep you informed. I also want to congratulate again our retirees and wish them well. It was so nice to have them here tonight. So thank you for organizing that, Dr. Brock. Also, I'm looking forward to graduation this weekend. It's going to be fun. It's one of the things I really look forward to. And so we've got 3 of them, and that'll be a lot of fun. And then I also wanted to mention, because Dr. Brock mentioned this in his report, and I said this to him personally the other day, I think he is a fantastic model for professional development, that he takes it upon himself to look into opportunities to grow in his own professional development and also connect in areas that are really important to our district and to our region. And, you know, with this social emotional learning, professional development, I'm wishing you the best in that. I think that's going to be fantastic, and look forward to hearing more about how that comes along.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan.
Hi, okay. You know, the retirees, you get to see them sometimes at the dinner, if you're able to make it, which I haven't, but, you know, you see these faces, and they've just become such a regular part of our daily lives, even as board members and parents or as staff, so, and there are definitely some ones that are gonna be greatly missed, not that there ever isn't before, but especially in this bunch is from a personal level, so congratulations to them. Student recognitions, as you said, Michelle, it's good to kind of get back to normalcy and recognizing our students again. That checkoff list is amazing to look at now versus when we helped create that or add to that over these years. That there literally is one item, albeit what it is, you know, one item left, that there's so much that's been accomplished. And you know, thank you to our administration and to our board for making that a possibility. And then finally, I got to partake in day of service at the preschool. My favorite thing to do in the world. And I had the cleanest about 3 feet of the truck in a solid line that went down, and it was pretty phenomenal. And it was fun to do it, and the bonus was my kids happened to be there that day as well, so that was a little bit of fun. But, you know, that's the stuff, at least myself and my colleagues at the fire department, we look forward to those kind of interactions, and it's been so long. And to see that happen again was just this breath of fresh air for us. So, yay, community service.
And partially clean fire truck.
And and do you think I cleaned more after? No, I showed it off. I didn't finish that.
What our kids did, that's right.
Thank you. Bridget.
Yeah, I too sat on the meeting Thursday night, and I really enjoyed listening to everybody. That's one thing I wrote down. And I was also happy to hear about all the students that got vaccinated and the teachers and everybody. And I also loved seeing all the pictures of the community service projects, watching them. There was all over the place. Every time I put on my computer, there was something popped up with all the family or all the students, and it was great to see.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, again, congratulations to all the retirees and all the Affton Strong students, and I look forward to hopefully a turf field myself if it works out. And I really do appreciate our district going out and making sure everybody that's vaccinated that wants to be, and I do appreciate that a lot. Hopefully make it a safe environment and get back to normal soon, and I look forward to seeing the kids come back to the meetings and where we can actually all have our picture taken with them.
Yes. I'm sure they miss having their pictures taken.
Pretty sure that's not on their radar.
It's not.
I too appreciate just all of the vaccination events and the way that the district has plugged into those opportunities for staff, for volunteers, for students. I just think it's just one example of a sign of our commitment to just trying to keep a very safe atmosphere and community, and I just think, you know, we have that kind of an impact. I mean, it's about the schools in a certain way, but it's also, you know, about the community in a broader way. I also just want to say that, you know, right now with 2 weeks of school left, I appreciate Dr. Brock, you keeping the guidelines kind of set the way they are now, despite or I don't want to say despite the guidance, you know, from CDC and St. Louis County Public Health and that. But what I appreciate about the approach that we're taking is, I really think it has just been a consistent message of yours, of the administration, the district, to put safety first, to have things be consistent. I don't know how many times I've turned on, the news right now, and everybody, the word is confusing. Well, you know what? There is no confusion when it comes to the Affton School District, and I appreciate that. I like the clear communication and just, limiting the confusion. All of that said, I'm also very excited to be considering new procedures for the fall, and I know you will, I know we will, and so I'm looking forward to that, but I just, in the moment with a week and a half or 2 weeks left, whatever it is,
Week and a half.
It's a week and a half.
You said 2 weeks, and I was like, ooh.
Yeah,
It's not 2 weeks.
it isn't 2 weeks, it's not 2 full weeks, so I appreciate that, thank you.
Well, I was thankful to have the retirees here tonight. There are some of those staff members and even Salim that had some impact on my kids, and got to work with him a couple of different times. But I also want to say, just listening to the meeting here and having seen another board who will remain nameless meeting in the last couple months, I would encourage you. I've seen about 10 different boards in their meetings, and I have yet to come across one that is more respectful and on target than this one. So if you ever get frustrated with our meetings, go watch some other board meetings. You will feel much better about what we do here. So I'm just thankful for that, and just looking forward to getting back to seeing your faces.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I will keep asking the question, when can we safely, since we're all vaccinated, use the masks so we can see each other? It just means a lot for communication, so.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple things that we didn't mention yet. One, before this, we got to go over to Gotch and to Rogers to have sort of a overdue dedication of the buildings, if you will. And it was just a great time to reflect on all that has happened in a very short period of time, and then looking at the list tonight with all of the different projects that were done. Also, we got to see Dr. Brotherton and Tom Bellavia and Sue Castellaggi, who were part of those projects. So it was kind of just a good evening of reflection, I think, for us as a board. And so we appreciate all the people that were able to be at those buildings with us, and all the people who were part of making those things happen. I also want to say we're sort of just getting used to this landslide of curriculum, and it's easy to forget how much work is actually behind that. So when we're reviewing 20, maybe next time 25 curriculum projects, it's just mind-boggling to think of what all of the staff who are working on those are managing right now, because the school year is not over, and they've got virtual students and in-person students, and Dr. McGee is, meeting with a lot of them to help them finish. So I just want to really appreciate the good work that's being done to get us to that next stage of curriculum, where we have sort of the body approved, and we can really start being innovative and moving forward with that. And also the early childhood conversation, I'm excited to see us get to that next stage where we say, okay, we've got the details, and now let's talk about what we value as a board, as a community, and how do we make sure that's reflected in what we're offering to our families. And finally, the football stadium stuff. A lot of us have never been part of that conversation before, and we laugh a lot because it is, I think, in any community, that's a hot button issue. It's expensive. What's the right thing to do? But I've never been, and I've been on the board for 4 years, part of a real conversation where we looked at it and thought about doing it and understood what it would do for kids and what it would mean for our community. So I'm excited, and I know we have some differing views, and our respectful conversation. I love the way you guys brought it to us and the way we were able to talk about it. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate all of you. And on that note, let's see if I'm going to get it right this time finally. I move that we adjourn to the executive meeting regarding personnel pursuant to section 610.0213 and legal pursuant to section 610.021. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? This requires a roll call vote, so we'll start with Patricia.
Yes.
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 And I'm a yes, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. We're moving to the other room, Travis. Yes.
Yes, we are.
Yes, 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 yes.